What is going on, everybody? Welcome back, finally, to College Football Talk with Peter Burnett. Been on a little bit of a hiatus here recently. For one, it's the off season, but for two, been really busy with the spring sports that I cover out here in the Omaha, Southwest Iowa area. It's been an exciting time covering state track and all that. Got to cover a guy, Landon Bloom from Woodbine in Iowa, who has received offers from Kansas State, Iowa, and Iowa State. Got to talk to a couple other athletes who are playing football at the next level as well, including one guy who's playing at Iowa Western. Shout out Luke Sternberg. But enough about that. Soccer's been fun too and busy, and we're shifting gears into summer sports. Iowa's the only one to play baseball in the summer, so I've gotten to cover a couple of games there, and then softball's also going on. But that does allow me a little bit more time, and we're getting into kind of that period where excitement is really starting to build up for the college football season. So I'm going to be talking kind of about the latest news and updates from around the college football world in this video, but kind of a general thing, but there's one main topic I'll be talking about. You probably already saw that in the title and the thumbnail. But before I get into all that, if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I upload. But getting into kind of the first point of this video, and that is this latest news about a potential 16-team college football playoff that seems to be settling more on that 5-by-11 model for 2026 and beyond. I'm not going to be getting too much into the auto qualifiers. I know the Big Ten and SEC are pushing for having 4 auto bids. I think in rare cases, are they not going to get that? I think most years they're going to get at least those 4 bids. So I kind of hope the rest of college football kind of pushes back against that to say, if you've only got 3 really good teams that are in this top 16, then it should only be 3 teams that get in. They shouldn't be able to have an automatic bid. That's my opinion on it. I think it should be the teams that the committee deems, and they're probably going to favor those Big Ten and SEC teams anyways, so why put that kind of safety net in there for those conferences, and even pushing for 5, a lot of confidence from those conferences. We'll talk about one of those conferences specifically a little later in this video. But what does the 5-by-11 model mean? Well, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. It's the top 5 conference champions, which is pretty much what we saw this past year, in the 11 at-large teams. The only difference is no longer is it going to be, a bye game for those teams that win their conference championship game, but in this model, it would be seedings based on rankings, not on being conference champions. So what would that look like? Taking a step back to last year, I'm also going to take a look 2 years ago because there's a little interesting dynamic with the last team to get in that field. Number 1 Oregon against number 16 Clemson, and this is kind of tough for both of these teams, conference champions, but you kind of got to go up against each other in that first round. It's survival of the fittest, natural selection, whatever you want to call it, and obviously in this case, because of the 5 highest ranked conference champions getting automatically into the CFP, Clemson would be in even if they would have been ranked at number 17. Now, this is something where the committee is probably going to have, the top 5 conference champions in that top 16, but I'll talk about how 2 years ago would maybe not have been the case. Going over the rest of these matchups, you've got an SEC clash, Georgia, number 2 against 15 South Carolina, number 3 Texas against number 14 Ole Miss, number 4 Penn State against number 13 Miami, 5 Notre Dame against 12 Arizona State, who's the Big 12 champion this last year. Number 6 Ohio State against number 11 Alabama, so the Crimson Tide do get in here. Number 7 Tennessee against SMU, number 10. And then number 8 Indiana against number 9 Boise State. Some of these matchups are honestly pretty interesting. I think some people, get a little spooked by the 16-team model, but I think a lot of these matchups would be fairly even contests. And honestly, debatedly, just based on the head-to-heads that we got, some of these might have been even better than those early first-round games that we got this year that were kind of, over before they started. A team like a Clemson might have the defense to kind of hang with Oregon, and with Cade Klubnik at quarterback, might have had enough to keep up with the Ducks' explosive offense too. South Carolina in previous years has kept it close against Georgia. I think Ole Miss would have an offense that would test Texas. Penn State, Miami, I think it's a little bit more favoring the Nittany Lions. I think that would look similar to their game against Boise State. Notre Dame, Arizona State, that would be a heck of a running back battle this past season. Ohio State, Alabama, that's always an interesting matchup, obviously. Tennessee, SMU, I think those would be two teams that are evenly matched. And then Indiana, Boise State as well. I mean, that would have been, I think, a really interesting first round. And then just kind of looking over some of the matchups that we might have gotten in the second round. Oregon, Indiana, that one I don't think is as interesting to me. Georgia against Tennessee or SMU, either way there. I mean, then we're kind of getting into what we saw with the quarterfinals. So the question is, is that first round even necessary? And that is, a question that is tough to answer. But again, I do think it creates more interesting matchups. And looking back 2 years ago now, in 2023, you'd have number 1 Michigan against number 16 Notre Dame. And I'll touch on that a little bit after I go through the rest of these. That is based solely on the conferences as they were in this season. Because you have number 2 Washington, who was the Pac-12 champion, against number 15 Louisville. Number 3, Texas, the Big 12 champion, against number 14, Arizona. Number 4, Alabama, the SEC champion, against number 13, LSU. And number 5, Florida State, the ACC champion, against number 12, Oklahoma. The other matchups, Georgia, Ole Miss, Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon against Missouri. However, with the current conferences, the top 5 conference champions would be Michigan out of the Big Ten. Let's just say in this scenario they play Washington in the Big Ten championship game. That would have dropped the Huskies down probably a little bit with a loss in that game, just basing it on who's ranked higher. You would have had Texas then as the SEC champion, and Alabama then, similarly to Washington, would probably be bumped down a couple rungs. And then you'd have FSU as the top conference champion out of the ACC. And then I think out of the Big 12 in these, the highest ranked team would be Arizona. I think out of the current Big 12, yes, looking over this right now, they would be the highest ranked team. So then with current conferences, that number 16 spot would then instead go to number 23 Liberty. If I'm looking over those rankings correctly before this video, I believe they were the 5th highest ranked conference champion. So that would mean the Flames would be in and Notre Dame would be out. So that is the interesting dynamic. It shows, this past year, everybody that got in and that is ranked in the top 16, I guess I should say, is able to get into this field. And you've got then 4 extra teams that get in. In 2023, you would have had a team that was ranked 16th get knocked down for the 23rd team. Now, is that good? You could argue on the side that it's a negative, that the number 23 team is probably going to get bounced by that number 1 team. But is there that much of a gap in quality between them and number 16 in this case? I don't think there's a huge gap. So I think it is something that's good and that's interesting that, because most years you're not going to have a Boise State. When you think about it, kind of outside of that Power 4 is Boise State, who won the Mountain West and had a phenomenal season behind Ashton Genty. So that's not going to happen every year. A lot more often it's going to be like Liberty last 2 years ago instead. So, and kind of shifting gears then into my next topic of conversation in this one, talking about conferences, the SEC's comments. There's a lot to dive through in the SEC. That could be a whole nother video, and comment below if you want me to dive into that a little bit more. But their comments, and then especially from Alabama, talking about the Crimson Tide's tougher than, average schedule this past season, that, maybe it should have allowed them to get into the playoff. But my argument is don't lose to Vanderbilt or Oklahoma. Yes, I would probably side with you, Alabama fans, in saying that your schedule was probably tougher than what a lot of teams, especially outside the SEC, faced this past season. But you have got to beat the opponent in front of you, especially ones that finish 3 games worse than you. If Alabama loses one of those other games on their schedule against a team that finished with a better record, I think that's not as much of a blot on their resume. But this is a big, issue, losing to those teams. And I know a 6-6 team in the SEC is maybe not the same as a 6-6 team in the ACC, but the way they performed against Oklahoma, that was not a playoff team. And so I think, yes, I can agree with the general sentiment that the SEC does play a really tough schedule. very few, I won't say no SEC games, but very few SEC games are easy to win, even if it might show out on the scoreboard, because those are a lot of physical teams. I think the Big Ten, they won the last two national champions. I think they're national championships. I think they're level with the SEC now. But yeah, I think you can't afford to lose games like that. Vanderbilt had a special season, but that one against Oklahoma is just kind of inexcusable. Another look kind of quickly over the 2026 recruiting ranks. Now, this whole point, they're not as important as they used to be, because of the transfer portal and everything, but USC is leading the way. Notre Dame, this is based on ESPN's rankings, by the way. Notre Dame jumped up to number 2. Ohio State dropped 1 to number 3. Penn State coming in at 4. Clemson at 5. Texas A&M at 6. Kansas up 1 spot to number 7, so that's interesting. Syracuse dropped 1 spot, but they're number 8 still. Arizona State at 9, and Illinois with a big jump from number 20 to enter into the top 10. Brett Bielema picking up some steam based on the 10-win season the Fighting Illini had last year. Some interesting things to note here, and again, this is maybe more illustrative of a changing college football landscape. Michigan is outside the top 10, Georgia, LSU, Miami, Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. The traditional powerhouses are all outside of the top 10. Now, there's 2 ways to look at this here. I think one is recruiting rankings are still very important, because you look at somebody like a Jeremiah Smith that you pick up as a freshman can make a massive impact on your team. And we've seen freshmen in other places make big impacts right away. Ryan Williams at Alabama, obviously. So it is still important to get really talented guys coming out of high school. But of course, the other thing is the transfer rankings, and maybe in my next video or another video coming up here soon, I'll take a deeper look at those rankings. But that's just kind of an observation. And then final topic point today, college football 26 is on the way. There's a lot of exciting news with that. I probably won't look at that as extensively as I did last year, just because that was the big return. But if you want me to kind of take a look at some of the new features in this upcoming game, comment that down below. I'm excited that we at least get some high school in Road to Glory. It sounds like it's kind of just playing moments rather than playing full games, which is a little bit of a disappointment, but it is cool that is going to be back in the game, getting to suit up, in a high school Friday Night Lights type environment in that game. So excited for that. Again, there's a lot of other features with that, but just kind of that's picking up steam again. We got that reveal trailer. I probably won't do a reaction like I did last year, but it was cool. We're getting some new songs in the game and everything like that. Some new hype up music, I guess, is a better way to say it. But again, comment below if you want a video that kind of dives more into that. I just kind of wanted to get this video out there to kind of go over kind of an all-encompassing look at what is going on the latest in the college football world. We are, I think, 13 Saturdays away, maybe 12, from the college football season kicking off in Dublin, Ireland, between Kansas State and Iowa State, and I cannot wait to get there. We've got 12 weeks to go, I think 12 or 13. Lots of content coming out here soon. They're going to be releasing those college football magazines, preview magazines out. I love taking a deep dive at those and starting to go into my conference previews. So keep an eye out for those probably in the next couple of months, I would say, whenever I get my hands on one of those magazines. But thank you so much for taking the time to watch College Football Talk. I'm your host, Peter Burtnett, signing out. Peace.